let's jump into the hybrid program, which looks a little bit different. Dave Beck, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So you've recently been approved to offer this new program, like just a couple of weeks ago, received approval for the hybrid physician assistant studies program. Could you tell me how the student experience in the hybrid program will differ? What will it look like? What will that hybrid student be doing?
Yeah, that is a good question. So to keep it short and sweet, it'll be 6 consecutive terms. The whole second year, so the last 3 terms, are just like what we offer with the residential program, having students out there in the clinics practicing the skills before they graduate and go get to be rookie PAs. So the real difference is in the first year where, we've kind of taken the model of the pandemic and applied it to how can we design courses to teach students remotely 90% of what we would teach them in the classroom, and then use that last 10% for on-campus immersion experiences is what we call them. So at the end of the first term and at the end of the third term, they'll come to campus to demonstrate that they have the practical skills that we just couldn't assess online through video or through other tools. So that's a good mix. It's primarily virtual. It's primarily them at home having asynchronous time, having synchronous time of class meetings throughout the year. But at the same time, we do have those checkpoints where they're live and in person in Pittsburgh twice a year for us to make sure that they're on pace.
Why might someone be interested in this hybrid format rather than a residential format?
A few reasons. Some that come quickly to mind are relocation. A student anywhere in the country could be a Pitt PA student, and we could find rotation sites near them for their second year, and they could take their first year of classes from home and not have to uproot their family or quit their part-time job or stop serving the community in the ways that they already do. That's really the big kicker, is expanding the access to education is the buzzy phrase that we try to use for that. The other part of it is that it could be a student from Pittsburgh, and it just fits their lifestyle better for them to be in a more flexible hybrid program where they don't have class from 8 to 5 every day in Oakland. They have 2 days per week. We've bunched together their synchronous time, and the other 5 days of the week, they can just get through their asynchronous content and live the life they want to live outside of that. So it's more flexible.
And do you see there being a difference between the strong candidates for the residential program and the strong candidates for the hybrid program?
Largely, no. I can say that we did change our screening tool a little bit for the hybrid students compared to the residential students for screening their applications early. So I caught that the answer for, is there added value for somebody with massive amounts of clinical hours? That's not the case for the residential program, but we made the decision to tier our system to be, more points in our pre-screening rubric for people who have more than 2,000 hours versus those with 1 to 2,000 versus those with 500 to 1,000. So we have identified some things that are bigger kickers for students to get them higher on our pre-screening score and more likely to get an interview, just based on the collective experience and expertise of the faculty who are making that decision.
Is there a reason to have those differences?
Yeah, so the model for hybrid education, we're expecting people who have been out of school longer and have had other careers. And so when we looked at people who have been working in higher profile roles in healthcare for long periods of time, we figured they would be most likely to succeed and most likely to be easily transitioning into being a PA colleague from their previous role as a dietitian nutritionist or from their previous role as a really high performing nurse in a clinical setting. And so we wanted to leverage the fact that that will probably be our applicant pool and favor those strong qualities within our screening system.
All right. So the courses themselves are the same.
Yeah, you could have copy and pasted that slide. That's right.
Almost. I almost could have. Your application deadline is different.
Right. Yeah. So basically the CASPA, the CAS system profile for a year, is, as Emily mentioned, it starts in April and it ends the following April. So the days within April vary, but that's essentially it. So where the residential program has to fill its class between April and their start date of January 1st, immediately following that April, they only have 6 or 8 months to actually get a pool of applicants to choose from, where what we are doing is starting a year and a half ahead. So April to April, we will have a full year of an open window for applications, and we won't start until the August after the application cycle completely closes. So we have seen the situation where the residential program is crunched to make quick decisions based on possibly not the pool that it could get because of its trying to, take advantage of the short period it has. We didn't want that to happen. So we have the full year compared to them.
And when does your program start? Emily mentioned that the residential program starts in January.
Yeah, so this would be fall term for the university. So probably the last Monday of August.
Okay, you talked a little bit about the direct patient care experiences and that there is a value to earning more than the 500 hours. Do you also require shadowing hours?
No, we also followed suit and didn't require shadowing, but it's definitely recommended. For a student to interview and be able to say that they spent time with a PA, know what a PA does, that there's value there. So we didn't want to have to lead the horses to water for the shadowing. We're hoping that they read the signs that they should.
Here we go. So we've talked about the application timeline. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ultimately, you're looking for a final class size of about 100 students. Is that right?
Yeah, and so far we have 600 applications in process. We've received about 60 of those, so that'll play out over the time. So we're in just 2 months of being in the application cycle. I'm very happy with how many applications have been started for our program.
Now, you're taking advantage of that whole application cycle, but is there an advantage to the student in submitting their application early?
Yeah, it's the same answer for the residential program, that we have to, we don't have, if we would wait until after the application cycle closed to have our interviews, we could be interviewing people who applied a full calendar year ago. So we'd rather keep them close to us by interviewing them soon after we receive their completed application. So through the year that the application cycle is open, we will have multiple interview opportunities and fill the class as we roll. So there is a benefit to applying early. There's also the fact that you don't have to have all of the requirements met when you apply. It's more about having them met by the deadline that we set, which could be a year after somebody has applied. So we take that in-process conditional applicants pretty seriously for that reason.
And to you, what is the most important piece in the application?
We are, the prerequisites, prerequisites, the required GPAs, all those things. That's easy stuff to follow directions. Do you meet the criteria or not? What we've been focusing most on in that pre-screening are people who have higher GPAs, because that's been found to be consistent with success. The more work experience, we think that's the better in this program for adapting to being this type of learner. And also just being somebody who can have a clearly intrinsic motivation for being able to be a student. So our interviews, and that's really where we're going to select who's in the class, is how they perform the interview. Somebody who demonstrates that they have the ability to drive their own learning, they can keep up with the asynchronous material. That's going to be a marker of success for these students, at least that first year. So that's who we're going to be screening for. That's the unwritten rule of how we're going to make those decisions.
And ideally, your graduates are all going to pass the PA National Certification Exam. Right. Ideally, they will all become employed. And from what Emily said, there's really not a lot of unemployed PAs out there. Is there any other ideal outcome for these students that have not yet started the program?
Yeah, and this won't apply to everybody, and that's okay. But I really would love to see that a student from an area that is not, already well served with its healthcare, has been working in their hometown as a lower level in the healthcare system, maybe a patient care technician or a medical assistant, and stays there for most, if not all, of their rotations, and then graduates and stays working there and serving that community in a higher way than they ever did before. So that's the real ideal outcome, is that we increase the access to healthcare across the country by allowing people to train up from within their home community and have them stay there, not move to the big city, go to PA school, and then stay in the big city for the rest of their lives and deplete a potential resource from their hometown. So that's what we'd love to see, but it won't apply to everybody, but I'm sure there will hopefully be enough cases where that's a strong outcome.
Wonderful. Now, we're going to jump into the Q&A, and thank you so much, everybody who's been able to stick around for a couple extra minutes. Do we have any questions for Dave about the hybrid PA program? All right. Well, if there aren't any questions, oh wait, something in the chat, is it? It's just a thank you. So thank you so much for the great information. And thank you for joining us today, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.